Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Speaking of Resilience podcast. I'm Kate Madigan with the Michigan Climate Action Network, or MyCAN. This podcast is also brought to you by the Groundwork Center. In today's episode, we hear from a bipartisan panel of Michigan policymakers on climate and clean energy policy. You're going to hear from Senator Mallory McMorrow, Representative Joe Bellino, Representative Rachel Hood, and Representative Yousef Rabhi. These Michigan lawmakers were speakers at the Michigan Climate and Clean Energy Summit on May 26. The summit was organized by MyCAN and the Groundwork Center. In this episode, you'll also hear from Charlotte Jameson, our partner at the Michigan Environmental Council, who did a fantastic job at the summit moderating this panel. In this episode, you're going to hear these lawmakers talk about legislation for community solar, electric vehicles, 100% renewable energy, and more. It's a really great conversation about what is possible to move through our legislature right now with the current makeup and what more ambitious policies we might be able to move forward soon. Here's our episode.
We're going to focus on the state level and action that's happening in the state legislature around some really critical issues. And one of those, the first one, is electric vehicles, which Michigan, as the leader of automotive world and industry, we should be the leader on electric vehicles. And I know the legislators that we have coming up to chat in a little bit are working hard to make sure that happens. So I would love to introduce now Michigan Representative Joe Bellino, who's a Republican representing the 17th House District, which is based in and around Monroe, Michigan. And Representative Bellino is also the chair of the House Energy Committee and has been doing a lot of work to support good electric vehicle policy here in Michigan. And so with that, Representative Bellino, I know you've got some opening remarks you'd like to make, so I'll hand it off to you.
Well, thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for inviting me. I'm pulled over in a rest stop here somewhere near Howell. That's how it worked out tonight, coming back from dinner. Dinner with solar folks. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But we've got a little bit of a few things going on in the House right now. Unfortunately, Rep. Schroeder has been ill the last few weeks, and she's the champion of a 6-bill package for EV in Michigan. And so it's sitting there right now. We know what it is. We read it. We know there's no problem for it to go through. And what I would like Michigan to be is maybe 1/10 of what I see in California. And I'll be going back there again in July with my family. When I go to California, I see chargers everywhere in all sectors of society, in all types of businesses, in malls, on the streets, at gas stations, at the Whole Foods or whatever fancy food store you go to. They're all over, and in state parks and in city parks. In the city of Santa Barbara, in fact, where my daughter lives, you go to the city park on the ocean, you pay to park there, but you also get a slot to charge your car to at the same time you're paying for your slot, though. So we need more things like that. And one of the bills that Rep. Schroeder's package has is to let state chargers go on state land. There's a lot of laws we got to change. I know that DTE and consumers had a rate case where they came out with a bunch of money for grants, and that's helping with charging, but we're still way behind. If I read correctly, I think 20% of all the chargers in America are in California, I believe. And I'd like to make that like Michigan. So I'm 63. I drive a gas guzzler. I'm out of the house in a year and a half. But luckily, we've got people like Senator McMorrow and the other side of the building that are younger, going to be around a long time. And I know in 8 to 10 years, the whole EV structure of Michigan will be flipped on its side and be 180 degrees different. So that's my opening statement. If you have any questions, just click away.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much, Representative Bellino. With that, I want to turn it over to Senator Mallory McMorrow. She's a Democrat representing the 13th Senate District, which is based in Oakland County and includes parts of Royal Oak, Rochester Hills, and Birmingham, and Troy, amongst others. I know you have a particularly interesting history with cars and what led you, I think, to being a champion on EVs in the state Senate. So yeah, would love to turn it over to you to hear a little bit more about what excites you and what makes you interested in electric vehicle policy in Michigan.
Thanks, Charlotte. Good evening, everybody. Really excited to be here and be back from maternity leave. I was out for a few months with my newest little one, Noah, who's out for a walk with dad right now. So she might pop in at the end, pending timing. But this is such an exciting time for this space. I think it's very rare that we ever have an opportunity where industry, what's best for the environment, and what's best for our health all combine at once. Usually these are interests that are kind of butting up against each other, and we have people on both sides of the aisle who are duking it out. But I think Representative Bellino hit on a perfect issue that we have to confront head on. For this to work in the state of Michigan, it needs to be ubiquitous. It has to be as easy as it is to get in a car and go to a gas station and not even thinking about it. And I think that we are at that point right now. We just saw the launch of the Ford F-150 Lightning. We have a Hummer EV coming out. We've got SUVs, cars, trucks. Jeep is electrifying their lineup, where we're finally hitting at a point where whatever flavor car you like to drive, there's going to be an option for you. So now it's time to get that infrastructure out there, and we can and should do that in the state of Michigan. I started my career as a car designer, so I found my way to the public policy space here. This is the state that changed the world fundamentally when it came to the auto industry and manufacturing. So this is our opportunity to do that again. We can't lose our place to states like California or to countries like China, who are investing very, very heavily in electrification and autonomous vehicle development. So I'm excited about it because when you look at all of the issues across the board that we deal with in Lansing, we never have an issue that hits that cross section where it's the right thing to do across the board. Now is that time, but we've got to go. We've got to sprint. We have to be, first to it. And I'm just excited to have people on both sides of the aisle who are excited about this issue. We have a federal administration and allies in the federal government, again, on both sides of the aisle who are excited about this issue, and the stars are finally aligning. So I'm just excited to put the pedal to the metal and do this thing.
That's putting the pedal to the metal is a great analogy for this little segment. So
pun intended.
So I've got a few questions for you guys. I know Representative Bellino, you talked about wanting Michigan to be, as far along as California is, and we're not quite there yet, unfortunately. So what are the barriers? What can we do to make up ground in this space and to make sure people have, access to EVs, are able to buy them, make sure we have charging? What is, state legislators should you all be prioritizing? Oh, I think you're muted, Representative Bellino.
Oh, I did mute during Mallory. Sorry about that. I didn't want to interrupt Mallory. She was going well. So anyway, we've got to drop the barriers and cut the red tape for entrepreneurs and the present charging companies out there, station companies, to come into Michigan and grow. Just like we got to do that with, solar rooftop. So if we do that, if we keep the regulations down, we open things up, they'll come there and build. I'm at a rest stop now. I don't know why there's not 4, 5, or 6 charging stations at this rest stop in Howell on 96 right now. I passed 2 electric vehicles coming here. I was speeding. I went going a couple miles over. So we should have charging stations. We should get rid of the red tape to let them do that in these rest stops. So things like that, simple things. Cut the red tape, let them grow.
Senator McMorrow, do you have thoughts in terms of additional barriers or policy ideas of what we should be moving forward on?
Yeah, I think, that is a perfect example of one thing. We started working on a bill package together last term around how do we expand electric vehicle charging stations across the state. And one of the things that we learned was that the barrier to putting chargers at rest stops, for example, is that the way that current federal law is written, we can't put anything that is revenue generating at a rest stop that is on a federal highway. And we would lose funding as a state for those roads. So we have a resolution that we'll be introducing tomorrow to encourage the federal government just to update that guidance to fit current times. Because I think, when those statutes were written, they were thinking of big gas stations that could potentially go in at rest stops, which is something that MDOT has concerns about as well. But I think, a charger is a small profile. We can put it in a parking space. We can have a few of them there. And if it's something that is just a simple barrier that we can remove, that opens up the doorway so that across our entire state, you have access to chargers. I love the idea of putting chargers throughout all of our state parks so that we can encourage EV tourism. If you can try out an electric vehicle, drive it all around Lake Michigan, what a great way to experience our state. Number one, test drive an electric vehicle if you've never done it before and realize pretty quickly it's just a car. It's a very quiet one. So when I kind of drive people, sometimes I have to lean out the window and say, excuse me, just to make sure that safety first. But I think there's a lot that we can be doing. So I also currently serve on the Council of Future Mobility and Electrification. I'm one of the legislators appointed to that council. And we're discussing right now, what else can we do in the areas of electrification, business development. We're looking at talent as well, because that's one of the things I think we've realized in the state of Michigan. We are the best in the country, if not the world, at manufacturing. We have more industrial designers, we have more engineers. Where we're lacking, and I think we need to make up, is in software developers, the people who have those tech skills. Some of those people are already graduating from our universities, but they're leaving the state. Why is that? How can we get more of those folks here? How can we support startups and people who are doing some really innovative things on the cutting edge to grow that industry here? So that we don't have people leaving the state. We have those innovations starting here, growing here, and driving all around the state and charging here as well.
It seems like another really great opportunity, especially bang for your buck, when it comes to both, potential cost savings from lower maintenance on electric vehicles, but also from a pollution perspective, is electrifying school buses and city buses. And I know we've got some federal money at the state level that's a little bit flexible, and we've got maybe the potential. We just heard from the Congresswoman Tlaib about potentially more funding coming, and I'm wondering if there's some movement in the state that you're hearing about to try to tackle electrifying public buses and school buses, and what some of that looks like.
Well, we haven't had a lot of talk in the House about school buses. Well, we kind of put our priority at the top first. Let's get some charging stations out there. Let's grow that. Let's grow the selling of the electric cars. Let's take some of that federal money and build charging stations and give people incentives with that federal money to buy electric vehicles. But school buses, commercial vehicles, garbage haulers, they've all done things in the past. Like in Monroe, one of my buses is bio. So they're making some changes and getting more fuel efficient, less pollution in the air. But I think we're a few years away from having all the school buses being electrified.
Yeah, it's something that I think is a huge space for opportunity that we've started to talk about on the Mobility Council. Because one of the concerns that I know that I've heard in the legislature, at least on the Senate side, when it comes to potentially incentives for consumer vehicles, is there's some pushback with, okay, well, why would I, for example, somebody who's driving a 13-year-old SUV that has 350,000 miles on it, why should my tax dollars go to incentivize somebody buying a new electric vehicle? And I think we're hitting that tipping point where electric vehicles that are on the market right now for consumers are still on the expensive side. But as more vehicles come on the market, that price point is going to come down. And I think some of those concerns about, kind of elitism or that access is going to be removed. But when you think about school buses, public transit vehicles, that's accessible for everybody. Everybody's kid rides a school bus. I'm really excited about the program that Eagle has rolled out. And also the potential, I serve on the Energy and Tech Committee on the Senate side, the potential for energy storage and transfer. So that's something that we heard from the Ford F-150 Lightning reveal, is that vehicle can actually serve as a backup generator for your home if you have the right systems installed. So I'm really excited about that from not only a bus deployment standpoint, but if you think about the use case for a school bus, it's driving for a few hours and then it's parked for most of the day. Can that vehicle be used for storage and transfer when it's not transporting children? So there's a ton of opportunity. It's something that we're discussing in the council right now. And I think is a great place for us to roll out, another pun intended, roll out some of these trials to see what it's like in the community, because one of the things that I've noticed too around electrification is it's new to a lot of people. And if you haven't experienced it, you're still a little bit on the fence. And if you saw buses and transit vehicles in your community, I think that that would ease people into the idea that it's just like a regular vehicle. It's just a lot more energy efficient, cost efficient, less moving parts, and much, much better for the environment, especially thinking about kids whose faces are at the exhaust level of those vehicles.
Yeah, I think there's you bring this really great point up about the great possibilities around, the integration into the grid and using electric vehicles as storage. And I saw that F-150 announcement. I think it was something like 3 days you could power your house with the F-150 battery, which is pretty amazing. And I know that the grid integration is something that the energy committees are keenly aware of and interested in. And I know the utilities are sort of thinking about that in that space too. So I don't know if Representative Bellino, if you have anything specific about that point in terms of your chairmanship of the committee that you wanted to bring to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Talk about battery. We haven't talked about this much in Energy Committee. The battery that, if you put solar in your house, you put a battery in your house, that battery can help save the grid because you've got power there. You're not going to be using the grid when you use that battery there. So I think we got a long way to go with solar in Michigan. I had some good discussions today. There was a proposal out there about 3 weeks ago, and some people didn't like it, but they came back with a counter proposal that I kind of like. So we'll see what's happening, and we'll know in a couple of days how people feel. Solar rooftop is the future. Solar rooftop for new homes and present homes that have the sun face, the house facing the right way with no shade. It's the future because it takes stress off the grid and saves you money. And if you want to you want to control your cost, put solar on there. That's what you do. So,
yeah. I'm interested too. I think electric vehicles are really unique given Michigan's place as the automotive leader. And that it's, you do find the ability to get, as you were saying, Senator McMorrow, a really broad array of stakeholders who are supportive of it. And I wonder what else you think is maybe unique about this space, that we can find some bipartisanship and find some both industry and environmentalist alignment that we maybe necessarily can't in other climate related areas.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's most exciting about this space is I like tapping into all of our competitiveness as Michiganders. We know we can do it. Like I said, we revolutionized the auto industry. There's no reason we can't do the same thing for climate, for solar, for, rethinking what our grid looks like. As soon as I saw the battery storage capacity and a backup generator capacity, immediately my mind went to Texas. Texas needs that backup energy grid. And we do too. We saw the polar vortex. We saw how vulnerable our grid is and can be. And there's just so many touch points, but I think tapping into that sense of competitiveness, that it's exciting. It's no longer a burden that we're thinking about, well, yeah, we'd like to get into that space, but it's too costly and we can't afford to, or we don't have the jobs there. This ticks all those boxes because now the cost is a non-starter. We're hitting the tipping point. And I saw a report just yesterday that there's a new paper says the annual healthcare costs of not addressing climate change in the United States is $820 billion a year. So by tackling that, if we can bring down healthcare costs, that brings in another industry that we weren't necessarily thinking about right off the bat. Because we're tackling clean air issues, because we're tackling some of these climate issues, we're creating jobs and jobs that are going to be here for the long haul, because these issues are not issues that are going away. We're seeing more and more frequent extreme weather events. So we've got to harden the grid. We've got to have that new tech in place. And it's just a winner across the board. But I always like to just, we're competitive. We can do this. We should absolutely be the best. There's no state that should be beating us at this, and we should be leading the rest of the world. And if we get everybody in that mindset and moving along the same path, I think we are going to do some really freaking incredible things.
I guess we have time for one more question here for you guys. For folks here who are interested in getting involved and advocating for good electric vehicle policy and helping to support the work you all and other legislators are doing in the state capitol, what should they be doing? What would you direct folks? How would you direct them to use their time and to help support these efforts?
I would ask them to email us or call us. Tell them what you think about electrification, what you think about battery power, things like that. Tell us how positive you are or negative, whatever it is, and let us know. Because the more emails I get from my area, my district, the more it sways me. The more people I talk to, the more it sways me. And we know where this is going. We know how Southeast Michigan is. We grew the car business. We're going to grow the electric business. Now think about this. 8 years ago, there was one legislator and one person I knew in the world with an electric vehicle. That was Bill Lavoie. That's all we talked about was a Volt or it was Tesla. Now look at all the brands we talk about today. We had a Rivian truck in front of the house all day the other day. Ford's big F-150 announcement, what Cadillac is doing, what Tesla is doing, and Chrysler. With the marketing and the push to manufacture is making the relevance of electric in our brains more important every day. We think about it all the time. So I'm 63. I'll get an electric car in about probably 3 or 4 years. My wife and I are talking about it. But my kids are going to have one in a couple of years, and they're only in their 30s. So this is phenomenal. Listen, and Detroit can do this. We can build all this and grow all this.
Yeah, I think that's right on. I'm on my second electric car. And it is just, so it's interesting when I talk to school groups in my district. Inevitably, every 4th grade class I talk to, one of their top issues is clean air and electric cars. They think it's super cool. Unsurprisingly, I live in the district with the Woodward Dream Crew. So, we are surrounded by cars all the time, but kids see this and immediately get that it's the future. And I think to Rep. Bellino's point, we need to hear it from the adults too, people who live in our district. I think that people can follow along with the work that the Council of Future Mobility and Electrification is doing. You can see the proposals. All of this work is public. If there's something you're passionate about on there or you have ideas to submit, send them in. Email your legislators. Take a look at who's chairing committees in different, both the House and the Senate. Email them. Say that it's an important issue. And I think that's what is going to push this along. We had our EV bill package last term, which was bipartisan, had a lot of great interest, and it just stalled out because I think that when you looked at the issues that were the top importance, it was hard to convey to some of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle why this was an important issue and an important issue right now. But especially we're coming out of the pandemic, we're getting back to normal. We've got to communicate across the board to all of our colleagues, this is an important issue and it's an important issue right now so we can hit the ground running. So email your legislators, follow along with the Council of Future Mobility and Electrification, and just get involved.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to be sending a bunch of people both your ways, so get ready. Thanks again, Representative Bellino and Senator McMorrow for joining us today and for all the work you guys are doing around electric vehicles in our state capitol.
Thank you. Thanks, Mel.
Thanks. Good to see you.
See you.
And with that, we are going to transition to hearing from Representative Hood. Representative Rachel Hood is a Democrat representing the 76th House District in Grand Rapids. And she has a long history of fighting for the environment and fighting for environmental justice, and is now doing that in the state house. And so Representative Hood is going to talk to us today about a bill she recently co-sponsored around community solar. So with that, I will hand it over to the representative.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group and be part of the Climate Action Network's summit here. So 2 bills were submitted a couple of weeks ago in concert with the Michigan Community Solar Alliance. Myself and Representative Michelle Hoydinga put together a bipartisan package that helps to accelerate community solar in Michigan. Every Michigan resident deserves the option to choose clean and affordable solar energy, but right now most lack access to cost-effective, reliable, renewable energy because state regulations stand in the way. The Michigan Community Solar Alliance and Rep. Hoytinga and I are working to change that. Our legislation plan provides energy customers with the opportunity to help meet their energy needs with locally produced renewable energy through a subscription to a local solar project. And they receive a credit on their monthly electric bill. No home installed solar panels and no big upfront costs, just access to clean, easy, affordable energy for those who want it. It's time for Michigan's lawmakers, myself included, to pass this legislation to allow community solar in our state. The demand is there, the savings are real, and the investments are coming. Opening the door to community solar around the state will encourage competition, it will spur innovation, and it will support the environment and ultimately save consumers money on their energy bills. And to visualize what this looks like, we may see a condo association install community solar. Community solar could be installed around the edges of an agricultural property, a farm, for instance, which has a lot of win-win benefits. It helps the lease benefits help the farmer manage their land, and that contributes to their economic portfolio and the viability of their farm, while at the same time, community members who aren't too far away can benefit from the solar energy that is generated in that location. In Grand Rapids, I think about our community business districts. We have wonderfully vital business districts that have significant square footage across their rooftops. That would be ideal for a community solar installation that could benefit both the business district and the businesses themselves, as well as residential neighbors who may be living on a second-story mixed-use building or a couple of blocks away, not far from that business district. Faith communities with extra land could find a way to maximize their space and generate income and meet their faith obligations to making sure that we pass forward a cleaner planet to our kids. Lots of different ways that our communities can partner to make community solar possible for the people of Michigan. And for a person like me, the decision between solar installation on my house or keeping my 60-year-old gorgeous sycamore tree makes community solar really important. My south-facing rooftop is shaded by that wonderful sycamore tree, which provides a ton of energy conservation benefits to my house. I don't want to take that down. I want to keep it. But if I could invest in community solar a few blocks away from my house, perhaps at the elementary or middle schools that have a lot of available land, I would be there in a minute as one of the first investors. So again, this creates a flexible and functional way for anybody in Michigan to benefit from solar. And in most community solar projects, folks receive about a 10 to 15% reduction in the cost of their energy bills. So these bills are in Rep. Bellino's committee, the Energy Committee in the House. We're hopeful that they get picked up, if not in the next few weeks here before we break for summer. Hopeful that these bills will get picked up in the fall for a public hearing. So when you contact Rep. Bellino about EVs, put in a plug for community solar as well.
Love that. Thank you so much, Representative Hood. I guess, I know Representative Hoytinga, your bill partner, couldn't be here tonight. Unfortunately, she had a conflict, but I think when it comes to Lansing, it's no secret that you two are pretty much polar opposites on the political perspective, spectrum. What brought you together on this piece of legislation? Do you have a sense of sort of the differing perspectives and what aligned because of the uniqueness of community solar?
Yeah, I think that Rep. Hoytinga and I have slightly different reasons, but not really that much different reasons for supporting solar. The main driver, behind my career commitment to clean energy and into sustainability and environmental protection has been fighting climate change and making sure that we have sustainable and resilient communities to raise our kids in and pass forward all of the amazing natural resources our state has to future generations. I think Rep. Hoytinga would phrase that a little bit differently, and she would say that community solar provides energy freedom and energy security to the state of Michigan. Again, slightly different phrases, different perhaps ethical drivers, but nonetheless, they arrive at the same point. When I think of resiliency, I'm often talking about energy security and creating safe communities that aren't as vulnerable to tornadoes, to any disruption in the electrical grid, et cetera. These are ultimately shared goals, different language. And I think that as we continue these discussions forward, we need to do a little bit more to hear each other and to speak each other's language so that we can press forward rapidly. I'd like to take a minute, if I can, to talk about the economic opportunity that we have, the jobs that this will create, and the once in many generations opportunity that we have right at our fingertips to begin investing in Michigan like we haven't been able to invest in decades. And the federal funds that we were discussing before are here, they're arriving. I sit on appropriations, and we know that we have a fantastic budget year ahead of us with more income and revenue for the state than we anticipated, and a growing budget and growing economy. And then we also have the ARPA funds, the American Recovery Program funds, about $6 billion there and more to come. And then subsequently this summer, hopefully the U.S. Congress and the President will come to agreement on those major infrastructure investments. A lot of those investments are going to need to be one-time investments, meaning that we're going to need to think very carefully before we invest in programs that we know we need to invest in over decades and centuries ahead, like schools and early childhood services and things like that. But these investments in our energy grid, in energy infrastructure, those are one-time investments that we can make now with these dollars, just flood our state, signaling that Michigan is really ready for clean energy is going to be huge. And I cannot tell you how lucky I feel to sit here in this seat and be able to be part of this moment. I've been dreaming for it and waiting for it as long as I've been reading the news. And so 25 years into that process or more, I just feel really blessed to have the skills, the interest, and the background to be able to help in these projects.
That's great. And I know that this bill or a similar bill has been introduced in previous legislative sessions and hasn't really gone anywhere, which has been hugely unfortunate. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the sort of opposition forces to getting this legislation done, and what you think the outlook is for this session to move the legislation forward?
Yeah, I think our energy utilities have been trying to adjust their business plans and be prepared for our new energy future before these sort of smaller scale decentralized energy assets start to come online. And there's a tension there. I I characterize it as, you know, the cart and the horse, which goes first, the chicken or the egg, who knows? My given my interest and really my district's interest, Grand Rapids' interest in moving forward with ambitious energy goals for our community, it's really time to start putting these decentralized energy production tools to use. And we anticipate that along with that infrastructure investment, or alongside it, we're going to see some major investments in the grid. And I think those two things together are what put the cart and the horse and connect them up. They're the hitch, if you will. And so in this unique opportunity, when we have this, you know, once in 3 or 4 generation opportunity to make an enormous investment in our energy infrastructure and to really face the opportunity of the 21st century economy and these jobs, we will be able to encourage our utilities to position more swiftly from being energy producers to being energy managers and distributors.
I'm curious, and I know you addressed this a little bit in your opening statements, but I tend to hear this argument all the time that, you know, our utilities are going out and they're embracing solar and they're building big solar arrays and they're doing it. So why do we need community solar, right? And I'm wondering if you could address a little bit why this is a particularly important policy to have in the mix as we transition to renewable energy.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I guess I'll speak from our experience in the city of Grand Rapids that large-scale projects have been hard to deliver in our community, especially when partnered with the utilities. The utilities are quasi-public entities. They're also private companies, and so they are driving at a return on investment that benefits their company. Sometimes 25 to 35% of the ROI is captured by the utility companies, and that has made it really difficult for members in our community to get behind, because we haven't seen the return on investment that we need to make those large scale projects happen. Also, you know, in proximity to densely developed urban spaces like ours, it's hard to find enough land and enough space to be able to develop these projects. In contrast, community solar projects are smaller in scale, and they can go in a variety of different places in urban, suburban, and rural communities easily. And then there's this piece about the small scale facilities reducing the costly investments that utilities have to make on generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure. So they don't demand as much performance from the grid, and therefore are easier for us to integrate into our systems along the way. So I think these smaller community scale projects are stepping stones to preparing for those large utility scale investments.
Great. And I think we've got time for maybe just one more quick question, which, you know, I know community solar in particular is really great, or can be really great for low income communities and low income individuals. I'm wondering how the policies that you are championing, the bills that you're championing, make sure that low income customers and low income communities benefit from community solar.
Yeah, again, when a community solar project is put online, the upfront costs are often covered as part of the financing package and part of the whatever entity it is that is sponsoring the project. So again, I'll use my own example. You know, we've looked at putting solar panels on our home It would have been, again, taking down my sycamore tree, and then also investing about $20,000. Even with, really attractive financing, that's tight for my middle class family of four. I think, we kind of bounce between 1 and 2 incomes because of this crazy job that I have. And it's been difficult to figure out how to make that work on our family's budget. And the return on investment is slow, again, over that 20-year period or 25-year period. With community solar, an individual can buy a subscription to a community solar installation with no upfront cost, and then begin receiving 10 to 15% reductions on their energy bills right away. So this is really attractive for low income or moderate income people who just, don't have the cash available to put on their roof, or if they do have the cash available, they're trying to make a decision between investing in their kids' college fund or their own retirement and, making that big investment in a solar array on their roof. It just eliminates having to make those choices and allows us to step into to clean energy pretty effortlessly.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Hood, for being with us today and for taking on these bills. Y'all heard it here. If you want to support community solar, make sure you call up Representative Bellino and let him know that you'd like to see Representative Hood and Representative Hoytenga's community solar bills get a hearing in the House Energy Committee. He's a nice guy, so let him know your thoughts on it. With that, I'm going to turn things over to our last guest speaker for tonight, Representative Yousef Rabhi. He's a Democrat representing the 53rd House District in Ann Arbor. He's not my representative, unfortunately, but he's nearby. And he's also the minority floor leader. So we're so excited to have you here today, Representative Robbi. You've been a huge champion for climate and clean energy in your tenure in the House, and while you were on the County Commission, the Washtenaw County Commission as well. So yeah, I want to hand it over to you if you have some kind of opening remarks you want to make about the state of climate policy in the Michigan legislature. We'd love to hear it. And then I know we're going to get into a little bit of dialogue too about some of the things we've heard here today. But first off, I'll hand it off to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, and everyone who has organized this this fantastic conference, and all of those that are attending. It's an honor for me to be here with you today, speaking on this very important issue. You've had a fantastic panel so far of very eloquently worded people who have told you about all the different projects and things that are going on both at the federal and state level. This time is a critical time, not just in our state, but in our nation and in our planet. We are facing down this COVID-19 pandemic, but we're also facing down another pandemic that we have to be worried about, and that is climate change. We are on the precipice of the point of no return, and our time to act, our time to make those changes that are necessary, the clock is ticking. And every hour, every day, every week that goes by without action is a mistake, frankly. And we need to be stepping up to the plate, both as people that know and care about this issue, whether you are an elected official, whether you are a citizen, whether you are working in the energy sector, or whether you are working in the service industry. This is all of our futures that are at stake, and it is all of our futures that are on the line that we need to be stepping up to the plate to find solutions to. And that's what we've heard about today. I'm so glad that the conversation around electric vehicles happened. I am a proud electric vehicle owner. I drive a Chevrolet Bolt that I bought a year ago. All this conversation about EV infrastructure is absolutely spot on. I've introduced 2 pieces of legislation last term. I plan to reintroduce them again this time. One of those pieces of legislation would directly say that the state can put charging stations at park and ride lots The other one is in the building code, saying that anytime somebody builds a new mall or an area that has a big parking lot, for every 100 spots that they put in, one of those spots has to include a charging station. We need the infrastructure now. We're transitioning, and we need to keep moving in that direction. And I am so grateful for my colleague and friend, Representative Hood, for the work that she's done on solar and home solar, on community solar. I too have been very active in this space. I've introduced a lot of pieces of legislation since my very first term back in 2017, when we introduced what was called at the time the Energy Freedom Package, which was drafted in my office and included the bill that Representative Hood is introducing this term around community solar. It also included the bill around removing the cap on distributed generation, which is now a Markinen bill. It is in committee, and it needs your help. It needs your voice. It needs your support to remove that cap on distributed generation so that we can reinvigorate the solar industry in the state of Michigan, so that we can remove this arbitrary cap on the ability of homeowners to put solar on their homes. It also included a bill that I introduced around making the reimbursement rate for solar at a fairer level that includes and takes into account the fact that home solar projects actually help our grid. They don't hurt our grid. Right now, the way that home solar users are compensated is an inflow-outflow system. It is frankly punitive towards those that have installed solar on their homes. It does not account for all the amazing benefits that solar brings to the grid, like those benefits that Representative Hood was just talking about. It creates security for the grid. It creates redundancy for the grid. It has environmental benefits. It has public health benefits. And all of that needs to be taken into account to incentivize those that are putting solar on their homes, so that we're not penalizing people for doing that. Lastly, I just want to mention another area that we've been doing a lot of work on is around, if we're gonna do electric vehicles, that's fantastic, but it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. If we're plugging electric vehicles into a dirty grid that is cranking out coal and natural gas, fossil fuels, that's not going to help our planet. It's just going to exacerbate the problem. We're going to need more power generated, and we can't be generating it from these dirty sources. And so I have introduced a bill last session, plan to reintroduce it this session, to move Michigan's renewable energy portfolio to 100% renewable. That is key, because frankly speaking, we have seen that utilities are making announcements here, they're making announcements there. They're trying to show the public that they care about the environment. But frankly, if you read between the lines, it's insufficient. They're not moving fast enough. We need to do better as a state. And frankly, we need to put it in our state law so that it is not an option for utilities to choose out of their own volition and goodwill to move towards renewable energy. It must be a mandate, a requirement from the state. And that is what my bill does, 100% renewable energy in the state of Michigan. The thing that I want to highlight here is, in my first term, when I introduced this bill, I had one co-sponsor. In my second term introducing the bill, essentially every member of the Democratic caucus, just about every member of the Democratic caucus, co-signed my bill. So we went from one co-sponsor to over 40. It was a fantastic change, and one that we are very proud of. This bill is becoming more and more, frankly, common sense. People understand the need to have a 100% renewable energy portfolio in the state of Michigan. And just as a side note, you all probably already know this, our portfolio standard right now is 15%, 1-5. That is hugely inadequate, has not been updated in a number of years. And it's time that we set a strong standard for the state of Michigan at 100%. Now, we all know that the resistance is going to be there from our utility industry, but we need to push past that resistance, because it is the right thing to do, not just for those of us today who care about climate, but we need to think about future generations and the impact that we are leaving in our atmosphere, in our climate. We need to think about all of those things. Our time is now to make these changes. And I didn't even get a chance to talk about all the things that we're doing to protect our water and our air from polluters. I introduced the polluter pay bill this year. I introduced it last session. I introduced it the session before. We must require that polluters in the state of Michigan pay for the messes that they make. It is time to increase that standard. It is unacceptable that we continue to saddle taxpayers with the cost of cleanup in the state of Michigan when corporations we know have made the messes, and they are there profiting, making money, and they are not cleaning up the messes that they make. Unacceptable. We can change that. And I believe that if enough of us speak up, if enough of us call representatives on both sides of the aisle and advocate for these common sense pieces of legislation, we will be able to pass them. And unfortunately, this is my last term in the State House of Representatives, and some of this may not happen when I'm here, but I'm thankful to know that people like Representative Hood are going to be carrying on the torch next term and fighting for these things into next term as well. We need to keep this going. Thank you all for being part of this dialogue today, for being part of this conversation, for being part of the change that we need in this world, in this state, in this nation. We are going to do it together, but it's going to take all of us taking that 10 minutes a week or whatever it is to call those legislators. And frankly, the other thing too is call your friends, call your relatives who maybe don't live in the districts that you live in. Maybe you live in my district, in the 53rd district in Ann Arbor. And maybe I'm not the one that you need to be calling, but maybe there's a friend of yours or a colleague or a family member that lives in Northern Michigan or that lives in Western Michigan that you can call and say, hey, I need you to contact your representative to get them to contact their representative or their senator so that we can, spread the voice around the state and grow the momentum around these common sense pieces of legislation that will impact our future, that will change the future of our planet and make sure that our children and our grandchildren are able to live in a planet that is free of the most horrific effects that we know are coming with climate change. So thank you, Charlotte, for giving me the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you so much, Representative Rabhi. I think both your speech and the clear signs of bipartisanship we've heard today make me feel a little better. But I know, having worked in Lansing as a lobbyist on climate and clean energy for going on 8 years now, it often feels like you're just ramming your head into a brick wall. And so I wonder, it seems like we have some really great opportunity. It seems like there's some really good momentum, but I know climate is still a dirty word to a lot of Republicans. And so I wonder what you see as ways to navigate around that and how we can still move forward on some of these really key pieces of policy and, frankly, budget to make sure that we're making progress.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, Representative Hood kind of hit on some of those issues. Everybody's coming at these bills from a different perspective. And as I said earlier, when we introduced these bills back in 2017 in my first term, we didn't talk really as much about climate change. We talked about it being an energy freedom issue. That's how we framed the bill package. That's how we talked about it. And there were, out of the 5 bills that we had in the package, it was 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats on this package, because this is not a partisan issue. When it comes to home solar, this is not a partisan issue. It's one that crosses the political spectrum. And we find that people on the far right side of the aisle and on the left side of the aisle are able to work together on this issue because, again, as Representative Hood said, we are coming at it from different perspectives, but our common goal is the same. And frankly, the main barrier, as Representative Hood just mentioned, is the utilities. And I'll say it, even more bluntly too, that this is about profits. This is about cutting into the profit motive of our for-profit utilities. And obviously they're going to do everything that they can to prevent that. Well, I have no sympathy for that. I have no sympathy for a company that just wants to line the pockets of its shareholders in Wall Street and forgets about the fact that we have the clock is ticking on climate change. We don't have time to drag our feet. We don't have time to do this at this pace that they're proposing. We need to act now. And thankfully, there are thousands of Michigan residents who are ready and willing to make the investment on their homes to transition to clean energy like solar. And that's what we should be encouraging. That's what we should be pushing. And when it comes to those Republicans that are on the far right side of the aisle, they think that it is not good that we have basically state condoned corporate monopolies running our energy sector, and that there should be more diversification and more people that are able to enter, into the market and generate energy. And I agree with them on that. And actually, this gets back to an issue that's live in my community right now. And I try to talk about it every opportunity that I have, which is, frankly, in my ideal world, we would actually go the other direction, which is to create and encourage municipal utilities in the state of Michigan. We have a robust system of municipal utilities right now. And I try to tell my constituents in Ann Arbor, any opportunity that I have, we need to be looking at municipalizing our power sources in the city of Ann Arbor, because if we do that, we the people will control our power. We the people will be able to say whether or not we support home solar. We the people will be able to transition our energy grid to a clean energy grid. And all I ask is that, people on this call and people in my district look at the comparison between DTE and Lansing Board of Power and Light, which is a publicly municipally owned utility. In DTE service area, we are reaching that 1% cap. They are fighting against the bill to increase the 1% cap on distributed generation because they don't want people to install solar on their homes. They want to continue to maintain that monopoly and that control. If you look at Lansing Board of Power and Light, they're actually offering a $2,000 basically tax rebate for people that put solar on their homes. So not only are they not blocking home solar, they're allowing it and they're encouraging it with a $2,000 incentive. That's what we could be doing in places like Ann Arbor and other places across the state. We need to be looking at municipalization of our power so that we the people can take back our power.
I just want to underscore that DG cap piece in particular, because I know Representative Bellino, the chair of the House Energy Committee, was on just a little bit ago and kind of alluded to it. So I just want to explore that a little bit more and make sure folks truly understand that right now in Michigan, we have an incredibly restrictive cap essentially on the number of people who can install rooftop solar or solar on their property. And it was put in place in 2008 when we didn't really fully understand this new technology and how it would impact the grid. But fast forward to now, and it's a very mature technology, it's fully understood. This is just an unnecessary and outdated cap. And yet it's still in place. And yet we still have this bill that's now stalled out in committee that would alleviate this problem, largely because utilities and the industry have aligned, or sorry, I shouldn't necessarily say all of the industry, but utilities have aligned behind not removing the cap. And so I just want to make that clear for folks that that's a huge barrier to anybody who wants to kind of expand solar. And I know this is something you've been working on a lot, Representative Rabhi, and just wanted to make sure that we're underscoring that for people, that this is a very live issue that folks could be acting on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Charlotte, for underscoring that. So this is a bill that, again, we drafted in my office back in 2017 as part of the Energy Freedom Package, sponsored by a Republican in the first term. Markinen, who's a Republican, has sponsored it last term and this term as well. This is kind of the tip of the spear when it comes to all the issues we've been talking about. This is the most live issue that has the most potential of getting across the finish line at this point. And that's why, again, we need all of you to be calling in, contacting your state representatives and state senators to let them know how important this issue is for you. And just to talk, in a little bit more detail about what the 1% cap means, it is 1%. No more than 1% of all the energy generated in each service area can be generated from distributed generation, from home solar. That is incredibly restrictive. And we've actually met that cap, or we're close to meeting that cap in most of our service areas in the state. Some companies have voluntarily chosen to increase the cap to 2%, but it's not a requirement that they do that. And so some people are or will soon find that their utility providers will be refusing the ability for them to do home solar distributed generation projects. That will have a huge negative impact, not just on our environment, but on our economy. If you think about all the solar installers that are out there, the investment that solar installers have made in their business, this is going to hurt that. And we need to be calling to make sure that changes. By the way, behind me is in fact a solar panel. This is the solar panel that my first ever bill was signed on by Governor Whitmer. This was part of a bipartisan package to remove barriers on people to be able to install solar on their homes and on their businesses. And this was an important bipartisan bill package that passed, was signed by the governor, was signed on that solar panel. So it is possible for us to do good things in Lansing. It is possible for us to do it in a bipartisan way. And it just takes all of you contacting your representatives and senators and telling them how important this is, because the only thing that's going to overwhelm the power of profit and the power of for-profit companies is the power of the people. And I firmly believe that, and I will believe it forever and ever. In fact, I don't take a dime from DTN consumers because I work for all of you first and foremost, and it gives me the ability to speak more freely on calls like this and call them out when they're doing the wrong thing. And in this case, they're absolutely on the wrong side of history. They need to back down. They need to let the solar industry flourish in the state of Michigan. It is to their advantage. It is to our advantage as a people. And it's time to make that change. So please call or email your representatives and senators.
So I would be remiss too. I know we had a lot of great conversation about electric vehicles just a little bit ago, but obviously we can't just one for one replace ICE engines with electric vehicles and completely solve our transportation problems. That will help obviously with emissions, but will still be hugely car dependent. And Michigan Environmental Council and other organizations across the state have been working for decades around public transit expansion, trains. Would love to have trains in the state more. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about where those issues stand, and especially now that we've got some federal funding, are there opportunities to put some of that towards transit in Michigan?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. This is a justice issue as much as it is an environmental issue. When I was a county commissioner, I served on SEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and I chaired a subcommittee on access. And we reviewed through GIS data the entire 7-county region of Southeast Michigan. And we looked at where there were pockets of basically where individuals had more than a 30-minute walk to basically accessing transit, buses and other transit to get to vital services like basic things like grocery stores, a doctor's appointment. And there are many pockets, unfortunately, within the city of Detroit and in other parts of Southeast Michigan. This is a problem that we as Michiganders and we those of us in Southeast Michigan have been facing for decades and generations. It is a problem that if we do not solve, will not just be an environmental issue, like I said, but it will continue to spiral into making economic conditions worse for people of color, for low-income communities. This is a justice issue. It's about making sure that people can get to the grocery store to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. It's about making sure people can get to their doctor's appointment. And frankly, we're talking about vaccines and vaccine access. It's no mistake that when you look at, the Ford Field vaccinations, why is it that such a tiny percentage of those that got vaccinated at Ford Field were actually Detroit residents? It's because a lot of people can't get downtown because the bus system doesn't work that way. We need regional transit in Southeast Michigan. We needed it in 2016. We needed it before then even. Unfortunately, it didn't pass by a razor-thin margin, but I think we should be taking another crack at that to try to get regional transit in Southeast Michigan again, so that we can move around our region and not be car dependent, and frankly, allow for those who are not able to purchase a car, because even when we transition to more battery heavy cars, we're still going to have the economic issue where some people cannot afford to buy or lease a vehicle, whether it's a gas vehicle or a battery vehicle, it doesn't matter. They still need to be able to get to the grocery store and other vital services, regardless of whether we have battery cars or not. So we need to be maintaining that focus on creating and implementing a regional transit system as soon as possible. Every day that we wait, more families go without fresh food. Every day that we wait, more elderly individuals aren't able to access life-saving care. These are people's lives that we're talking about, and waiting is frankly irresponsible and inhumane.
Well, I know you and I can talk about these issues all day long, and I would love to do that, but unfortunately,
and we have.
we have, and it's been great. Unfortunately, we are at time, but I think this is a great place to leave it. Folks have heard a lot today about all of the exciting things that are happening at the federal level here in Michigan on a whole host of really amazing legislation. And I would just underscore again that if you are interested in helping to move these bills along, as Representative Rabhi has said, get in touch with your legislators, get in touch with your friends who live in other parts of the state, connect with groups like MEC and MyCan and Groundwork Center and others, and get involved, and we can help you leverage your power as a citizen of Michigan to help make progress. And so I just wanted to underscore that. And then also big thank you to Representative Rabhi and to all of our other legislators who were on the call today. It's been hugely helpful and uplifting, and I am excited to hit the ground running again tomorrow on all these issues.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Speaking of Resilience podcast. You can find more episodes of the Speaking of Resilience podcast at our website, groundworkcenter.org/podcast, miclimateaction.org/podcast, or on all major podcast platforms. If you appreciate this content and want more of it, stay up to date by subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps other listeners find the Speaking of Resilient podcast. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Groundwork Center and at MI Climate Action. Speaking of Resilience is created by the Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities and the Michigan Climate Action Network. This episode was produced by Taylor Cramer of Cold Shower Media in collaboration with Nick Loud of the Boardman Review.